Welcome to our pre-recorded broadcast of last night's Marinette Mayor's Candidate Forum, sponsored by the University of Wisconsin-Marinette and the Marinette-Menominee Area Chamber of Commerce. The event was held at the Herbert L. Williams Theater at the UW-Marinette campus. The moderator is Kurt Willman.
So welcome to the Marinette Mayoral Forum on the campus of the University of Wisconsin-Marinette. Tonight's forum is sponsored jointly by the Marinette-Menominee Area Chamber of Commerce and the University of Wisconsin-Marinette campus. My name is Kurt Willman, and I will be the moderator for this evening. I am the Assistant Campus Dean for Administration and Finance on campus, and I'm also on the Board of Directors of the Chamber of Commerce. For information purposes, I am not a voting member or a resident of the City of Marinette. So please let me introduce the candidates in last name alphabetical order. We have Steve Genisot and Martha Karban. The opinions expressed by the candidates and others do not necessarily represent those of the university or chamber. Forum rules dictate that the audience will be allowed to submit written questions on cards, which you were handed on the way in. If you need a card or you have a card to submit, please raise your hand and one of our student ushers who are in the back will collect them from you. No verbal questions or statements from the audience will be allowed during the forum. A panel comprised of volunteers from the Marinette-Menominee Area Chamber of Commerce, sitting at the table over here, will select the issue questions from those that are submitted, screening to eliminate potentially one-sided, hostile, or otherwise inappropriate questions, as well as duplicate questions. Our chamber members who are sitting there are Dan Mack in the middle, Randy Crystal, and our chamber executive director, Jackie Boudreau. Each candidate will be allocated 3 minutes for an opening statement. A drawing has already been done to determine which candidate begins, and Steve Genisot was the winner, so he will be the candidate that starts. After the 3-minute opening statements, each candidate will be asked questions, and they will have 2 minutes to respond. There will be no rebuttals. At the end of each question and answer period, each candidate will also have 3 minutes at the end of tonight's forum for a closing statement. And Martha will go first. And the candidates have asked me to use their first names in addressing them. A volunteer, our campus dean, seated behind me, will serve as timekeeper, and time rules will be strictly observed as much as possible. So candidate Steve Karban will go first based on the drawing. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem.
See, I already messed up. So opening statement. We'll start with Steve for 3 minutes.
Okay. Good evening. I want to thank the UW and the Marinette-Menominee Chamber of Commerce for the invitation to participate tonight. I would also like to thank our family, friends, supporters, and Ms. Karban for agreeing to participate. I welcome an open and informative discussion to address the issues important to the residents of the City of Marinette. I truly believe I can contribute to the community as your mayor and will bring my experience as a manager and a business owner to the City of Marinette. Our current mayor has taken us in the right direction, and I will continue to build on her leadership and keep moving Marinette forward. My priorities as mayor are to make city government accountable to the taxpayer, promote positive business growth for both large and small business, and I will foster collaboration and open dialogue with the City Council so that we can move projects forward. To do this, city government needs to be accountable by spending taxpayer money wisely and within budgets. It needs to be open and transparent to citizens. Lack of proper oversight is an example by recent issues with the water department and subsequent rate increases. Lack of management and working budget result in these issues and that we now face. But recently we have put a process in place to provide more oversight and prevent this type of problem from reoccurring. When I talk about collaboration, I mean working together with the council, their respective wards, the residents that live in them, and collaboration is the most sensible path toward the completion of many long-standing projects that we've been working towards. This includes projects like the domes and other failing infrastructures. We've discussed, we debated, we spent numerous dollars for studies, but we're no further ahead for implementing many of these projects outlined in the needs assessment studies. Let's try to start to build what we can afford. Let's try to stay away from Cadillac plans and start with what makes sense. These projects require action and results today. Lastly, as a manager and a business owner, I know how important growth is, and I will encourage open lines of dialogue with the city, local businesses, and any other interest businesses. Communication is key to determining business needs and job growth that inevitably follows business expansion. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight and welcome your questions and concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Martha?
Good evening. I would also like to thank the University and Chamber for sponsoring this event, and everyone in the audience for your interest in the future of our city. I want to thank my family, my husband Tom, and our 2 children for their unconditional love and support in this endeavor. My name is Martha Karban. It is my privilege and honor to be here tonight to tell you why I should be your next mayor. 8 years ago, friends and neighbors encouraged me to run for a soon-to-be empty city council seat in our ward. Since then, through 3 elected terms, I have served the city and have been an active voice in the decisions that not only benefit my neighborhood, but ensure a positive future for the city of Marinette. What makes me an effective leader? Someone that gets things done? I listen with an open mind. I respond promptly and appropriately, and I truly try to treat everyone equally and with respect. Here's an example. When Jerry Hansen, who's with us tonight, came to us with an interest of locating a dog park within the city, I was happy to help him start that process. I encouraged him to organize a group of interested dog owners and bring some ideas to our Civic Affairs Committee. He did. The Tri-Cities Dog Park Group formed and presented us with a petition of over 200 residents with the same interest. Even though the first locations were voted down and the group had to expand their search, I made sure to keep them on the Civic Affairs agenda every month in an effort to keep the path of communication ongoing and help them increase exposure for their cause. Research into this project took my husband and I to dog parks all over northeastern Wisconsin, from Kaukauna to Tomahawk, Anigo to Howard. And let it be noted, we have never owned a dog, so sometimes it's awkward at those parks. Jerry announced yesterday to me that the group has found a home for their park. Even though I am delighted to see the success of a citizen-inspired grassroots effort, I am also disappointed that our city administration did not work harder and lost this opportunity to develop a unique park to the town of Peshtigo. I did everything I could as an alderperson. If I had been mayor, I think the outcome could have been better. The experience I have gained working on the city council, along with an optimism that we can work together to provide the best possible service in the most effective and efficient manner, has led me, for the second time, to run for the office of Mayor of the City of Marinette.
First question for Steve is, what do you see as the 1 or 2 most pressing issues for the City of Marinette? And briefly, what is your plan to address them?
I think there's a lot of positive, good things happening. There are things that we need to look at. A lot of those are outlined in the needs assessment studies we've done. I think we are in agreement, probably both candidates and a lot of people interested in the rec department, the domes, that area of the city. We have issues that I think all of us are aware of that certainly we're waiting for something to happen, and we don't want that to happen with one of the domes going down. We don't have a real good plan to finance and change or implement new structures there. So I think that's an important thing we need to look at. That's one thing. I mean, certainly keeping our taxpayers' dollars used wisely for business growth, that's important. Those are probably the two big things I'd like to see.
Thank you. Martha, I'll repeat the question. What do you see as the one or two most pressing issues for the city of Marinette? And briefly, what is your plan to address them?
I'm not sure if most people know that the city spent over $200,000 on a needs assessment study from an outside firm that basically eliminates the recreation program in the city and suggests that we build an $8 million police department. I don't think the citizens of Marinette would agree with that at all. And it seems like a study that is completely useless. I would form a committee immediately of local folks to come up with a plan that would help us figure out a way to build a recreation center without using any taxpayer dollars. We should be able to pull private funds in, and if the city had to make a bond, we should be able to do something that could be paid yearly with our room tax dollars. The other problem is the police department. It's aging, it's falling apart. There's simply not enough room for our officers. But an $8 million plan is just not feasible. I think that together we can come up with an affordable police department that meets the needs of the officers and also meets the needs of the city budget. Communication, I think, is a second big issue in this city. We need better communication between city government, the departments, the city council, our employees, and the citizens of Marinette.
Thank you, Martha.
Thank you.
Martha, you're going to get the second question.
Okay.
So the question is, what are your plans for revitalization of the downtown?
We've just spent millions of dollars rebuilding a huge section of our Main Street corridor. Now it's time for us to find ways to pull businesses into that area. We need to assess our local businesses, find out their needs. We need to search the state for grant opportunities. We need to make an atmosphere that will make people want to come into that downtown area. We have further downtown, we have many empty storefronts, and it's time that we figure out a way to fill those up.
Okay, thank you. So Steve, you get the same question, which is, what are your plans for the revitalization of the downtown?
That's a good question. I guess I would agree. The city has spent a lot of money on the corridor, especially going towards the Marinette Marine. We're planning and speaking to the city engineer to continue some of that in the future. Certainly bringing better lighting, improvement in the roadway. That goes one step. For business, being that these properties are owned, they need to obviously be part of that process, bringing business owners in and seeing what their needs are. I know parking has been concerns. We talk about extending walkways and pathways along the waterfront, and also incorporate that into the city is important. My understanding, there's some private business, new business ownership that has changed and bringing some money into the downtown area in a couple different buildings. That adds to the interest in the downtown, and that's part of the process. But part of it is making it attractive. There's limited what the government can do, so for me to say we're going to bring all this business, I can't say that, but certainly listening and seeing what their needs are. Also, bringing some of that infrastructure as we can and as we can afford it. We can't just say we're going to spend hundreds of thousands of downtown, because we still have to have people willing to open businesses. So I think the biggest thing is working with them and putting time frames and schedules that we can try to work with them and improve and make improvements as we can afford them and get grant money and so forth.
Thank you, Steve. And you get this question first. New question. How would you propose implementing the needs assessment evaluation that was done from Ayers and Associates?
And that's a big question too, because I just polled just briefly just to refresh some of the things. Those of you that were involved with that process, and I was involved with part of that process as well. Pretty lengthy. There's a lot of things that it pointed out that we should do. Certainly, we would love to do all of them. Financially, we definitely can't. The frustrating thing is we spend a lot of money to do study after study, and if we could have only used a fraction of that money to implement some of these projects. We know City Hall has some issues in the sharing of the police department and space, and there's even mechanical issues. But I think, included the rec center is another thing. But how we can go about implementing, I think the biggest thing is we just start with one, and instead of going for the large scale that they recommended, I think we maybe start smaller and start with one project at a time. I mean, we look at the rec center, for instance, and they want a beautiful convention center. We can't afford it. For one, we can't afford to even maintain it if we did get the dollars. And room tax, everyone talks about it, but that's limited as well. And you can only use that for certain types of spending, so that limits us as well. But I think, simple things, a steel structure and a limited capacity. It doesn't have to be grand. You can put openings that you can bring in for large boating, camper shows, garden shows. You can build that accordingly on some of the current structures that we have in place. Brings in new mechanicals, more efficient. And certainly those are some of the things that we can start working towards. But you can't do it all, and you just have to start with what you can afford and plan for it.
Thank you, Steve. Martha, the same question comes to you. Again, I'll repeat it. How would you propose implementing the needs assessment evaluation that was done by Ayers and Associates?
Well, that needs assessment study has been completed for over a year, and the city at this point has done nothing. The city council did look at all of the needs and prioritized those needs, and then created an ad hoc committee, but we haven't had a report from that committee in several months. I think at this point what we really need to do is put together a new committee of local folks that would include city council representation, the mayor, people from private entities, and the stakeholders from the police department and the rec department. And we need to start putting a plan together and put some timelines on it. We need to have an idea of what we want to do this year by the end of the summer. Steve is right. We don't need a Cadillac plan for these needs, but we do have needs and we need to address them. The domes are going to blow down one of these days, and there is absolutely no plan to replace them. We need to come up with a plan. I believe that right now there's $800,000 in room tax dollars that's sitting there for the city. We need to act, and we need to act now on those needs so that the city can begin to move forward.
Thank you, Martha. The next question, question 4, goes to you first. Will you be a full-time mayor with no other job?
Yes, I will be a full-time mayor for the city of Marinette, and I plan to work hard. If I am elected as your next mayor, I will immediately give my resignation to the Luther Home, and within a few weeks I will be at City Hall, and that will be my only job for the next 3 years.
Steve, the same question goes to you. Again, I'll repeat it. Will you be a full-time mayor with no other job?
Certainly. And for those of you who know me, I do own a business in town. I do have a full-time manager. I also manage a long-term care pharmacy. certainly not going to quit my day job until I do get the job, hopefully, nor would Martha quit her job. So my intent is to obviously quit my job and become a full-time mayor.
Okay, thank you. New question goes to you, Steve, first. Candidates, some feel that city employees, such as the forester, are given jobs outside their area of expertise. Do you see this as an issue, and what, if anything, would you do about it?
This issue has been brought to me, and I've asked questions as well. I know Todd, and I think a lot of people, I guess I shouldn't say names, but everyone knows who it is. I think he has a degree in forestry. Certainly we should be using him in that capacity. There was somewhere along the line he was not a department head anymore. I think that might not be a bad thing. I think we should use his expertise. I know Martha's brought to the council about forestry, gardening, and things like that, and different things we'd like to see in the city. I think he should be used in that capacity to give us input and certainly manage some of those things. So I think that's something that we need to address. It's not just the mayor that can make that decision. I think the council has to decide what direction they want to go. And I think that's something that we could certainly look at.
Thank you, Steve. Martha, the same question goes to you. Again, I'll repeat it. Some feel that city employees, such as the forester, are given jobs outside their area of expertise. Do you see this as an issue? And what, if anything, would you do about it?
Well, I certainly would like to see, especially our city forester, utilized for his expertise. When he first came to the city, he was, I do believe, a full-time forester, and you could see it in our community by the beauty of the parks, the green areas. He developed our city as a bird city. I hate to see somebody that should be out doing their job, changing light bulbs, when we probably have other people that could do that job. And if there's other employees in the city that were not capitalizing on their talents, we really need to get back to the basics and use them for all the potential that they have.
Thank you, Martha. This next new question goes to you first, and it's a two-part question. What would you suggest as a plan for the domes and pool at the Civic Center? And part two is, if the domes failed today, any thoughts for an emergency plan?
Well, I'm not sure that a dome would be the best replacement for the Civic Center. They do not lend themselves well to any other activities. If we wanted, I know at one time they tried to have some shows in there, but it's so difficult because of the structure of the domes to move vehicles in and out of the building without collapsing the domes. The domes are antiquated, they're old, they are going to come down. It's just a question of time, folks. We could have a big windstorm, and let's just hope that there's nobody in those buildings when those domes do come down. I would like to see some other type of structure. I don't know what it is, but a structure that could be a multi-purpose use so that we could use it as a community center. We could pull programs, conventions in, that it would serve the community much better than what we have now. But I would still love to see a sheet of ice and tennis capabilities. Right now, there is no plan if those domes go down. I have no idea what the council would do in the case of an emergency.
Thank you, Martha. Steve, same question. What would you suggest as a plan for the domes and pool at the Civic Center? And if the domes failed today, any thoughts for an emergency plan?
I've met with the director of the rec department and as well as some other department heads, but specifically the rec department. And I have a concern, just even personally, my family, my son goes there and on Fridays, and there's skating with a lot of his friends even this time of the year. So certainly I have a concern if something would happen and those go down when there's full of children. It's a great area, great need for the community to have those open. I don't think we have a plan if it fails. They say 200,000 rough numbers just to put them back up if one failed. I don't think we have that in the budget to just write a check for that, nor I think would people want to based on their history with those structures. There's not air conditioning or any usable mechanicals in the summer months. They have to be inflated. They're loud. There's pressure issues with the doors going into locker rooms. I got a tour a few weeks ago, and frankly, they've done a fantastic job working with what they have. It all comes down to money. All these studies we've done, again, if we could have put a fraction of the money towards some of this stuff, would have been great. But we need to maybe think a little smaller. We can't do it all. We need to decide what our priorities. We use a lot of use of the domes for hockey. I know is a big thing. There's a lot of supporters. The pool is widely used, but we've got to decide what we can do first. Talking to Kent, we certainly could do something with a steel structure. We've got to decide what's best and what we can afford there. They can't bring things through the back door. There's too small of openings. They can't use the locker room wisely. So if we can look to those structures and see what we can afford, I think would be a great start.
Thank you, Steve. New question goes to you first, Steve. What is your opinion regarding the train horn debate?
I was told this would be on there for sure. This is a hot topic, and no matter how you answer it, somebody's not going to like the opinion. And we voted on this. I think the council's looked long and hard. We've had study on this, and I think we've made a decision what we're doing with it. The city doesn't have the appetite to pay for some of the cost to actually put in place so that it's safe. There's 3 different options, my understanding. They range anywhere from roughly $300,000 to $750,000, and there's no guarantee that the railroad is degree, or if there's a accident that they wouldn't shut that off. Ellicourt shutting that portion down is not a great option. I know there's been a lot of concerns of doing that. It's tough. Nobody wants a horn in their backyard, but they've done studies, or I shouldn't say studies, but they've polled people in the community, and there's not a lot of support to pay for it. So for me to say we're going to do it, or any candidate, it's a little bit. If we can't afford it and we won't pay for it, I guess we're not going to move forward. Could we move it into future projects? Maybe, but there's no guarantee.
Thank you. Martha, the same question goes to you. What is your opinion regarding the train horn debate?
Well, I think Steve and I disagree a little bit on this one. First of all, after we had the study, we know that we have a safety issue at Ellicourt. Again, there's an accident waiting to happen there because that crossing is not protected at all. The railroad has volunteered to pay us $15,000 to close that intersection. The other option would be to put up the arms, and that probably is an option that's not affordable by the city because that could cost us almost $300,000, and I don't think we have the money to put those up or to maintain them. As far as the rest of the crossings, we know now what needs to be done there to make those safer. I would never borrow money to create a quiet zone. But over the years, if we could improve each intersection as those street projects come up, just envelope them in, who knows, maybe someday it would be an option if all the intersections were done. But my biggest concern at this point is the Ellicourt crossing. It's very dangerous, and it does create a safety hazard for the city.
Thank you, Martha. The next question was a trigonometry question. I think a student slipped something from their homework in, but I'm going to move on from that one. Martha, you get the next question first. Do you feel that the problems with the water department have been corrected? What, if anything, will you do to improve this situation?
Do I feel they've been corrected?
And what, if anything, will you do to improve this situation? Was their question.
Well, I guess not really. There have been some strides at the water department. The rates are still going up. Letters have gone out that haven't been signed. I think that we have a long way to go at the water department to win back the trust of the community. There definitely needs to be more accountability on a weekly basis. But the citizens want to know what is going on at the water department, and I don't think that the actions have been communicated clearly to us.
Thank you, Martha. Microphone goes to Steve. Same question goes to you. I'll repeat it. Do you feel that the problems with the water department have been corrected? What, if anything, will you do to improve this situation?
I think there's been a lot of change, a lot of improvements. Can I say everything? I can't say everything, but I think most of the issues we have. I was on the commission years ago. We had a budget. We balanced every month. We knew where we were financially. When Mayor Harvick came in, I was taken off. Recently, current mayor has asked me to get on there, and the first question I asked, where's our budget? We didn't have a budget. There was major issues. We didn't have a budget. How do you know if you're making money or not? So with the commission support and a new change in leadership, both at the operation and the office manager, we've changed that. We now have a budget. We're managing a budget, but we're still getting a rate increase. I can't correct. I'm a volunteer. I'm not a paid employee to do this. I'm doing the best I can to try to improve it. But I really think that we have made great improvement, and we've got a great staff at the water department. We've got a beautiful $20 million plan. And I think we've got a lot of checks and balances. There's direct reporting to the mayor. There's direct reporting to the finance director on a monthly basis. There's 2 council members that sit on the commission. They report every month to the council. So there is reporting, and certainly there's a lot more transparency than there ever was.
Thank you, Steve. New question goes to you first. How would you attract new business to our city?
I think business growth is very important. There's areas of town that we'd like to see improved. Everyone looks at the mall. They look at downtown. We like to do things. We can incentivize through some programs. I know there's low finance. We have the industrial park. We try to attract business. There's sometimes grant money we can go after. Sometimes that's limited. We look at TIF. Again, that is for special projects. So I think there's opportunity in some cases. We hear a lot of positive about people wanting to come to Marinette. The city can help to a certain point, some of it infrastructure, but then again there's cost involved. I can't say there's any one thing that we can do, but I think a lot of it can bring to light what business needs and try to work to see what the business can do, with financing and support through community or state grants and different avenues there. But to just say one thing, I can't, but because you need to combine a lot of things and you need to see what their needs are depending on the business. So I think the lines of communication and listening to what their needs are and what we can do for them. We've seen a lot of growth recently, and people want to come to Marinette. So I think we need to keep open lines to help keep attracting business and see what we can do as a community.
Thanks, Steve. The mic goes to Martha for the same question, which I'll repeat. How would you attract new business to our city?
Well, first of all, I think we need to talk to the businesses that we have currently and find out what they need and what they feel is missing in the business environment in our city. We need to look at all the areas where we currently have empty storefronts. We have a lot of strip malls popping up around town, but we have an almost empty Pine Tree Mall and many empty stores in our downtown area. We need to look to the state and see what granting opportunities are available. And I think businesses are also attracted to cities that have great schools, like anybody else that comes to the city, that have great health care and that have great recreation. So pulling businesses into the city is just like pulling residents into the city. We have to have something to offer them.
Thank you, Martha. New question goes to you first. How would you rank these issues in order of importance? And there's 4 of them. Police department facilities, the Civic Center, City Park camping, and the Red Arrow Park camping, and why? So rank in order of importance: police department facilities, Civic Center, City Park camping, Red Arrow Park camping, and why?
Well, I'm going to rank the police department first, the Civic Center second, and I think it's kind of a tie for me between City Park camping, but I'm going to pick Red Arrow Park camping as third and City Park camping as fourth.
And why?
Our police department is aging, it's out of date, it needs more space. We have a police department where I've seen a break table that I think sometimes gets used for interrogation and evidence collection. There just is not room for our police officers to do their job in the space that they have. And they have a lot of stuff these days. There's just no place to store all the equipment that's required for their job. There's also the parking situation. There's no place for us to park a police car in the winter when it's snowing and those guys have to get out and do their job. Should they have to go out there and in an emergency and brush the snow off their cars? It's the same thing in the summer when it's so hot out and they've got computers in their cars and have to run the air conditioning all the time, even when they're in the building. We have to come up with a plan for them that meets their needs but is affordable and also meets the budgeting requirements of the city. The Civic Center I put down as my second choice. We need to come up with a plan. I'm running out of time. The Red Arrow Park, I think that we could have room for campers there, which we don't really at the City Park, but I'd love to see the City Park remain as a small campground.
Thank you, Martha. The mic goes to Steve. And I'll repeat the question. How would you rank these issues in order of importance? And the 4 issues are police department facilities, Civic Center, City Park camping, Red Arrow Park camping, and why?
I guess I would have to say, if you look at the needs assessment, the police department was a big number 1 as far as ranking. I would think the domes would be my first priority. The city police department is probably the most expensive. The domes worry me just for the fact is we've been told that their use and when they will fail is unknown, and we already reached most of its lifespan. So I think we need to do something there, and I think we need to start small, what we can afford. Certainly the police department is important. I agree that I've been in the back there. I work with the Sheriff Auxiliary, and I've been in the Marinette City Police Department. They've got space issues. But there's all sorts of different thought process there with the needs assessment. Should we move them to the old county jail building, and that is an old building itself? Do we build a new one? Again, we've got to pay for that. And then what do we do with City Hall? There's mechanical issues there. So I would say that the rec would be my top priority. The police department would be second, and do what we could afford. And I would say the Red Arrow and the City Park. I live in Manicotti. I'd love to see more development and work in the Red Arrow. We've got a lot of funding, and we're going after more grant money. The time to do that is when we put in the walkways and improvements down that way, and that would be the time that we would start to work towards that. So those would be my priority listing.
Thank you, Steve. And you get a new question. Studies and planning take time and money. yet major projects still seem to have major flaws. Do you see this as an issue, and if so, what would you do about it?
There's been a few things that I've come across in the last probably 6 months, and some of these things that I know we pay a lot of money for in firms to do work for us for the city. Certainly I would expect that part of that contract ensures that we have completion of projects, timely notifications to state and federal authorities. We've had some issues recently where things weren't signed off properly, but I would think that's why we have contracts and we have ways of holding back dollars if those things are not done. We certainly can use those. We need, in certain cases, when grants and things, to use those processes, but I'd like to see more. I know the engineering department does a lot. I'd like to see more done internally. We do spend a lot of money on study after study, and we've got a lot of smart people in the city, and not just in the engineering, but all throughout the city, and why can't we utilize them more? Certain things we need them for, but I'd like to see us spend maybe our money a little wiser in that area.
Thank you, Steve. Martha, the same question goes to you. Studies and planning take time and money, yet major projects still seem to have major flaws. Do you see this as an issue? And if so, what would you do about it?
Certainly it's an issue. Studies are important. It's the way that we can find the best ways to get things done. But not all studies really need to be hired out to outside consultants. And when they are, we have to be sure to put caps on those studies so that we don't overspend like we did with the needs assessment study. I agree that in-house we can solve a lot of our problems, and even when we hire out with studies, I think we need to have a local voice in order to help reach the needs that our community needs. I think sometimes when these people come in from the outside, they're not looking at the true needs of Marinette. They're just putting together a more generic type study. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. New question goes to you first. What are your thoughts to improve our waterfront properties?
Well, currently we really are improving our waterfront properties. The Menominee Harbor project is a project that's been in the works for years, as well as the Lower Menominee River project. We have just recently garnered millions of dollars in grants to clean up those waterways, to improve our harbor. That will be an ongoing process. Our river is cleaned up and will be available to fishermen, rookeries, recreation. I think our waterfront is going to be beautiful in the next few years, and I think we're doing a very good job.
Thank you, Martha. Steve, the same question goes to you, which is, what are your thoughts to improve our waterfront properties?
Well, I think we're in the right direction. We've spent, but more importantly, we've got a lot of grants to improve the waterfront. And part of that process is the removal of all the contaminants along the river, which aids us to start other projects. That was the first step, and there goes a lot of credit to the current city staff and departments that have worked to get that money, which we could never afford as a community. And I think we understate that to the community if they knew the millions of dollars that we've gotten in free money. I would love to see a walkway from the Interstate Bridge all the way to the Red Arrow Park, for bike and walkways. If we were in any other community, I lived after college 5 years down in Holland, Michigan. If we had the same situation there, we would have had this paths and bikeways long ago. But part of that, like I say, is money, and we've gotten a lot of free money and great cleanup, and now's the time to start doing that. If we can connect some of that, certainly there's portions we have to go around, but with the Marinette Marine, but we could certainly extend that all the way to Red Arrow. And if you look at the master plan we have for Minneconne Harbor, there's walkways, paths, and connecting with all sorts of for wildlife viewing, and it's pretty neat, and we're pretty close to doing a lot of that, and we've got money that we're going after for completing some of those projects. So I think we just keep going towards that, and we've got some great opportunities.
Thank you. New question to Steve first. We have many blighted buildings in the city. What, if anything, should we do about them?
I think, this comes up just, I have people live in my ward, it's kind of funny, the first thing they say is, what are you going to do about that property? Certainly the mayor can direct that, and it goes to the point is the city inspector can't be in every property, in every building, but certainly we do have rules and regulations for some properties. In some cases the city has to take over and pay some of those costs and put it on the tax rolls, and whoever takes ownership obviously has to reimburse the city for that. There's some code enforcement things we could look at. If those should be in place, and we maybe have to look at those and if they're getting done or not. But certainly we have to follow what ordinance and rules we have, and if we're not, we need to look at that and call to the attention of the people that are enforcing them. And that would be my take on that, just to utilize some of the rules and regulations that we should have and move towards that.
Thank you. Martha, the same question. We have many blighted buildings in the city. What, if anything, should we do about them?
Well, the city does not have a huge budget when it comes to removing blighted buildings, but it can be done. In my neighborhood, I had a neighbor who was very concerned about a building next door to her that was overrun with cats and raccoons, and she had contacted the city for over 6 years to try to get something done. After she contacted me, I was able to get her on committee almost immediately, and it still took some time, but within the next year, that building was down, and now her children are able to play outside without having to worry about wild animals. I think the city needs to be very proactive when it comes to buildings that start to deteriorate. Our code enforcement and our city assessor need to stay on top of violations that are happening, and I think that we could keep some of these buildings from turning into blight. We need to encourage our citizens to keep up their properties as best as they are able to, and we also need to let them know that with our Marinette Redevelopment Authority, there is opportunities for people that need to fix up their houses to be able to get funding from the city for that.
Thank you, Martha. Our last question goes to you first, Martha. What civic or administrative experience qualifies you to manage the city's government and budget?
Well, first of all, I've been on the city council for the last 8 years. I've been elected 3 times to serve the citizens of Ward 8. I've served on several committees: public safety, civic affairs, the Board of Public Works. I've also represented the city on the Plan Commission. I represent the city on the Marinette Redevelopment Authority, and also on the Stevenson Public Library Foundation. I've been very active in the community as a volunteer. And last summer, a group of us took one of our parks, Merchant Park, and decided that we would try to clean that park up on our own. it's going to be very difficult with volunteers to clean up all our parks, but I do hope that we can get more to step forward to help with that.
Thank you. Steve, the same last question goes to you. What civic or administrative experience qualifies you to manage the city's government and budget?
I think my experience with the city has been some of it volunteering and being asked to be on certain committees. Those include some of the needs assessment, being on the commission before, the Water Commission, certainly being asked more recently again, being on the Harbor Commission. I think that gives me some opportunity to see some of the inner workings of the city. Certainly, I don't have years of experience in City Hall, and sometimes I don't think that's a bad thing. It might be a fresh look at how things are done. I look at a lot of things as business, and if we don't have the money, why are we spending it? Because if we spend it, then you and I are both going to be paying for that for years. So my biggest experience, I would say, is or thing that I would bring to City Hall would be to look at it from a business standpoint and what's the right thing to do. Manage a budget. I manage a budget in my other business at similar size of the city. There's a lot of unique things that we have to look at. We have to forward plan. I think we need to do more forward planning and budgeting for future things. And then probably the last thing, I think the important thing is the mayor is one person. You still have to bring all the council members together to vote on things, and you have to bring those together to make a decision. So I think the mayor's job is to bring people together, and I think I can do that. You've got to be open to different ideas. I may have one way of approaching it. I may have somebody else that can bring another idea to the point. But bringing people together and making a decision is important, and running things in a budget is important as well, and that's what I think I'd bring.
Thank you, Steve. We'll now go to our closing statements, and by prior earlier agreement, Martha will go first for the closing statement. It will be a 3-minute statement.
Thank you. Again, I would like to thank the Chamber and the University for sponsoring the forum tonight, for everyone's attendance, and also to Steve for agreeing to be here. Thank you. It is up to you, the voters, to determine who has the right experience and the right vision to serve as your next mayor. I actively participate in decisions that positively affect our city. And often that means I have to speak up, often from the minority and sometimes forcefully, to protect the things that are important to our community and those things which are just plain common sense. I voted to keep the pool open for our children. I voted against pay raises for the mayor and city council members, who frankly did not need them. I regularly vote against ordinances that burden the majority of law-abiding citizens, such as the parking ban on the tree lawns during the winter months. And I also strive to improve ordinances that just aren't effective. I recently helped draft and voted for a change in our fence ordinance, which will prohibit further use of concrete barriers. I do not make decisions based on the emotions or drama in the city council chambers, or against folks that aren't popular or have a difficult time presenting their side of an issue. I make decisions based on the facts, common sense, and the overall good for the city. I asked for years for budget information to be given to the council from the water utility. If the administration had followed through with my insistent requests, the utility may never have gotten themselves into such deep financial troubles. We'll never know. The utility still needs closer oversight to prevent miscommunication, like the unsigned letter that went out to hundreds of owners of vacant lots in the city. I am appalled that the mismanagement at the water department was allowed to drag on for so many years, and that no accountability was ever made. I have a vision for our city that includes taking decisive action on the Civic Center domes and our out-of-date police department. I have a vision that includes developing a code of ethics for the city and a mission statement for the City Council to help improve our service to the community and guide our decision making. Let's create a vision together that is built on the collaborative efforts of the Mayor's Office, the City Council, our employees, and the citizens of Marinette. I strongly believe that if we work together, we will accomplish our goals.
Thank you, Martha. Steve, 3-minute closing statement, please.
All right. I'd like to thank all those who worked hard to make this debate possible. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss some important issues to the community. As your mayor, I will commit city government to be accountable to the taxpayer. I will require the city government be transparent, and I promise to maintain ongoing, open lines of communication with the residents of the city and business owners. Along with City Council, I will push hard to find solutions to the issues we've discussed tonight. We need to keep growing and improving the city for the benefit of all. I will use my business experience to manage budgets, promote positive growth, and I will treat people fairly and honestly. We live in a great community, great educational system such as here. I want to see Marinette prosper today and in the future. We owe it to ourselves and, more importantly, to our kids to keep this city vital and a great place to live and raise a family. And please remember to vote. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate Steve Genisot. Thank you, candidate Martha Karban. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please remember to vote and to encourage your Marinette friends and neighbors to vote on Tuesday, April 7th. Thank you.
You've been listening to a pre-recorded broadcast of last night's Marinette Mayor's Candidate Forum, co-sponsored by the University of Wisconsin-Marinette and the Marinette-Menominee Area Chamber of Commerce. The event was held at the Herbert L. Williams Theater on the UW-Marinette campus. The moderator was Kurt Willman. Thank you for listening to the special Public Affairs broadcast on Hometown Radio 103.7 FM and 1340 WAGN.